Hi there. It's so good to be here at this very moment. And do you know what brings me here? The topic of settings. I am here to talk about settings, and it's a big deal because settings is one of the elements of a story. Now, what really are settings? Many of us know that settings refers to the places in a story. But what many of us do not know is that setting also refers to the time in a story. So setting is actually the places where events occurred or the time when events occurred in a story. Now I'm going to focus on place settings first. That's where events occurred. Then I'll gradually move on to when events occurred, and that is in reference to time settings. So let's talk about place setting. I said place setting. There are four types of place settings, and I mean four. The first one is the whole setting. The second one is the major setting. The third one is the minor setting. And the last is the viewed setting. Now, I want you to understand that a story can have more than one of any of these settings. So I want to explain what they are so that it will be easy for us to go through our PowerPoint slides and understand, and then look at our worksheets and do our tasks independently. Is that okay? I think I see you nod. Okay. So whole setting is the entire setting that the whole story depicts or reveals or shows. Now, in a story, you have events. These events happens in places. Now, what is the entire name of all these places put together? That's the whole setting. So if you have a story where an event happened in the room, on the stairs, in the kitchen, and in the garage, we have these four settings being announced or revealed in the story through events. We can automatically say that the whole setting is a house. That is, if the author doesn't mention that it was happening in a house, we can infer that the story happened in a house. And so the whole setting is a house. I'll ask another question and just think about this. We read a story, and the story is talking about events that happened in a classroom, in a library, in the science lab, on the playground. Do you know what the whole setting will be? A school! Correct. One more, just one more. Now you read a book, and events happen in different places. Events happen in a school, in a park, on a bridge, on the expressway, at the airport. What's the whole setting there? Boom! A city or a town. So I'm sure by now you know what the whole setting is. What I want to explain now is the major setting. Every story has the main events. The main events of a story are those events that convey the message that the author wants to convey. Meaning that if you take out one of those events, the story is altered. These events happen in places. The places where key, important, or main events happen in a story are called major setting. The places where major, key, important events happen are called major settings. Did you get that? Good. Now let's go on to minor settings. So there are also events in a story. They add interest and spice to the whole story. They make the story a bit more interesting than it could have been. But this does not mean that the events are so important. No. If you take these events out, you still get the message. The story might not be as interesting, but the message that the author wants to convey is still conveyed. Now, these events are the minor or the petty events. And where the minor or the petty events happen is called the minor setting. Did you get that? Okay, now let's go on to the viewed setting. Sometimes an author is creative enough to do this, to write a story, incorporate a setting that nobody ever goes to. Very possible. Okay, so imagine a story of the princess, and the princess' father is ill, and she's so worried she doesn't know what to do. She goes out to her balcony and looks out the window. She views the horizon in the distance, and tears stream down her face because she feels so helpless. Now, the princess viewed the horizon in the distance. She didn't go there. The story didn't say that anything happened in the horizon. The only thing related to the horizon in that story was that the princess viewed or saw. That setting is called the viewed setting. So let's list out all the types of settings again, because once we get to know what the types of settings are, when we are writing our own stories, we can carefully, skillfully incorporate any of the settings that we want. But you know, a major setting has to always be in our story. So let's list them again. Number 1, whole setting. Number 2, major setting. Number 3, minor setting. And number 4, viewed setting. Use the PowerPoint. It will give you further information. There is even a quick plenary there to help reinforce this learning. Now, I am moving on to our second type of setting, which is time setting. Time. Okay, now what are time settings, or what is time setting? Time setting refers to when events occurred in the story. And there are two types that we are going to be focusing on in this first half term. The two types are the time of the day and the era or period. So let's talk about the time of the day. When you are talking about the time of the day, you are talking about morning, afternoon, evening, night. So when things happen in a particular day. Sometimes authors are very specific to say things like one morning or he went to bed at night. They say the word so you know when the event happened. Sometimes authors are even more creative than that. What they do is that they incorporate events for you to decipher when it happened. So if, for example, the author is talking about the character looking at the skies, and the author mentions stars and the moon, and maybe the author mentions that the character was wearing their pajamas or something, you should know that it is nighttime, because there are three clues there to tell us the time of the day. How about if the author writes a story and says something about the cock crowing? Oh, duh, the cock crows in the morning. So we should know that, right? So how about tea time? Tea time. If an author mentions tea time, what time of the day would that be? I ain't gonna say nothing because that's part of your task. You figure it out, go and research. Then you will know what tea time is. Many of you are thinking it's morning. Go and check it out. Okay, so let's move on to era or period. When it comes to era or period, we are talking about identifying if the story is set in the ancient times, in the present times, or in the future times. Now, there are many things that can reveal the era of a story. Your story starter can reveal the era of a story. So when stories begin with phrases like a long, long time ago, that has nothing to do with the future era and absolutely nothing to do with the present era. So it's easy for you to tell that the era of that story is in the ancient past. Okay, stories that have features like breeches and corsets and carts and wagons and castles. When you see stories having those kind of features that are unique to the ancient era, then you know that that is the time setting of the story. But if we are talking about things like cars and pants and mansions, then you know that we're talking about the present era. Well, I don't know what the future era kind of setting would be, but I'm sure by the time you start talking about computers and robots and a lot of digital things, then the era of that story would be futuristic. So if you go to your PowerPoint slide, I'm just here to incite you and excite you about what is in the PowerPoint slide. Because if I allow you to go onto the PowerPoint, it might be too serious for you. So let me come create some fun out of today's lesson, then move you onto the PowerPoint slide so that you can do your task in the worksheets. So have fun, people. Have fun. I know you do good. See you next time. Bye.